Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life, the channel that talks all things Wentworth. Oh my god guys, I have got one hell of an episode to review today. I'm so excited. But before I jump into that, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as it really helps us out. Okay then, Wentworth Season 3 Episode 8, Goldfish. Now then, this is literally one of my favourite all-time ever episodes of Wentworth. I love the whole show, but every now and again, they really go to the next level with certain episodes, and this is definitely one of them. And I know there are a lot of you guys out there and other Wentworth fans who also love this episode. It is a very heavily featured Joan Ferguson episode, and even though we did have a Joan Ferguson flashback style episode in season 2, this time we finally get to see the real Joan Ferguson. The episode begins with Joan coming home after a long day at work, and I just love seeing Joan's house. Every time I watch this scene, I literally look around in the background trying to see what Joan owns. I really love the bit where she comes in and she puts on some comfy slippers. Joan, you are a girl after my own heart. We see that Joan has a stunning house, and it's also extremely spotless, probably the cleanest and tidiest house in the whole of Australia. It does make me feel a little bit sad when we see Joan eating alone at her dinner table. Poor Joan, she just wants to be loved. We see a pet goldfish that Joan has in her home, and while Joan is cleaning her shoes, she spots that her goldfish has died. Joan then takes the fish to the bathroom and pokes and prods it a couple of times, and she says, "What's the matter with you? I mean, the fish is gone, Joan, let it go to fish heaven." But then Joan ends up pulling the tail off this fish before proceeding to flush it down the toilet. Now, guys, I have an interesting question here that I would love all of you to answer. We never got to find out what the name of this goldfish was, so let me know in the comments box below what you think that Joan had named her goldfish before the goldfish was no more. I will be really interested to hear. Kim Chang is still very sour about Frankie and Bridget. I mean, Kim has no proof that anything is going on between them, but she's still being very vocal about Frankie and Bridget. There is actually this really funny scene near the start of the episode where all of the women, they're in the library having some group chat fun, where one person tells a story and then another person goes behind them and uses their arms. And Kim and Boomer end up telling the story of how Frankie is basically a bitch, fucking someone else, and Boomer ends up pointing towards Bridget. Once again, this is in front of all of the women. So Bridget decides it's now time to be very careful with Frankie. When Frankie has a meeting with Bridget, Bridget ends up leaving the door open to make it look like that they have nothing to hide. There's nothing dodgy going on behind the closed door. But Bridget also tells Frankie that she won't be finishing her sessions with her going forward. It will be done by a different guy, and this doesn't go down very well with Frankie. She's furious with Kim, and later on in the episode, Frankie ends up taking Kim to one side where there are no cameras, and Frankie gives Kim a good old bitch slap. And do you know what, guys? I loved it. Kim really deserved that one. But will these rumours about Frankie and Bridget go away? Only time will tell. I forgot to mention that Joan actually reorders herself a new goldfish, and she has it delivered to the prison. I mean, why not? Fletcher, he ends up taking a little bit of a fancy to this fish, and he enjoys watching it swimming around in his little tank, and it's kinda cute. Now guys, what would Fletcher name this new fish? I bet Fletcher and Joan have very different thoughts when it comes to naming a fish. So guys, let me know what you think that Fletcher would name this new fish. I find it hilarious when Vera goes into Joan's office and tells her that she has a delivery and it's a fish. Joan looks so confused by this fish. Joan notices some tension with Vera, and Joan ends up inviting Vera to her house later on tonight for dinner. Ooh, so Vera turns up at Joan's house, and the pair of them, they're there having a nice little dinner together. They're eating their food and it's all really quiet and silent, and I don't know what it is, but this scene, it always makes me ravenous for some food. The sounds of the cutlery on the plates, and Joan's cooking looks absolutely stunning. Even thinking about this scene is making me want to run downstairs and cook some dinner. Anyway, Vera ends up standing up to Joan when she brings up the whole hostage incident with the needle that went into her neck, and Vera tells Joan that she doesn't care about her. And this is when Joan actually, she shows a little bit of affection. She puts her hand on top of Vera's hand and she says that she does care. So this is actually quite a big step for Joan, and you can see that Joan isn't any good at showing this kind of affection. Now, Vera does end up telling Joan that she has caught hepatitis C as a result of that needle, and Joan quickly removes her hand off Vera's and starts rubbing it into some tissue like she's proper disgusted. Vera ends up getting up and she just leaves, and the next morning Joan tells Vera that last night never happened. Ugh, everything about this episode is just so good. There is a scene where Joan is looking out of her governor's window and we can see Joan's reflection looking back at her, but when Joan looks away, the reflection doesn't move. Now, I never noticed this the very first time watching the episode. Not until somebody mentioned it. I think it was in one of the Wentworth Facebook groups, and it's very interesting. I feel that this was the writers discreetly telling us that Joan is definitely this Jekyll and Hyde sort of person, split personality, who is slowly starting to lose control. A very heavily pregnant Doreen is craving choc chip ice cream, and Jess ends up going to Joan to ask for it, but Joan just looks at Jess as if to say, "Go away, you creature." But in the middle of the night, Joan actually does bring choc chip ice cream to Doreen and assures Doreen that she doesn't need anything in return, just enjoy it. But Joan does a really creepy thing when she calls Doreen Gianna, and Doreen's just thinking to herself, who the fuck is Gianna? Is the freak pissed? Doreen relays this information to Bea and Maxine, and Bea asks Doreen to try and get more information about this Gianna. As Bea is asking Doreen to do this, Juice and her crew, they're busy bringing in a new mattress for Doreen, and Juice ends up accusing Doreen of opening her mouth or her legs to John Ferguson, which really ends up pissing off Doreen, and Doreen ends up getting into a big row with Juice and calls Juice a load of names until the officers break it all up. But oh god, later on, Juice and her crew corner Doreen and threaten to jab her with a Hep C needle before going to throw her onto the ground, and it's horrible. It's really horrible to watch, guys, because the way Doreen lands on her big pregnant stomach, oh, it just made me feel sick. Doreen is then transferred into protection, and Bea and Maxine pay Juice a visit, and Maxine beats the absolute crap out of Juice, and Bea ends up stamping on Juice's leg and breaks it. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I was cheering when Juice got hers. She more than deserved it. When Doreen is put into the protection unit, Jess wants to go with her, and she ends up pleading with Joan, but Joan just says no. Jess ends up calling Joan a fucking bitch, and Joan tells the officers to slot Jess, and Jess ends up hurling a load of abuse at Joan, calling her every name under the sun, and Joan looks so angry. I actually loved seeing Jess lose her shit. It was the first time where she really let her mask slip in front of a load of people and showed everyone that she isn't this sweet and innocent girl. Joan goes to see Doreen in the protection unit, and this is where Doreen asks Joan about Gianna, and Joan tells Doreen that it is the woman in the other prison that, what she told Doreen about in season 2, the one who had her baby taken away, and then of course Gianna apparently killed herself. Now things take a surprising turn when Baby Bump starts kicking, and Doreen puts Joan's hand on her belly. Joan then leans in to Doreen to give Doreen a kiss. Until Doreen's waters breaks. Thank God for those waters breaking. Saved by the water break. But what was going on? Joan was about to kiss Doreen Anderson. So Doreen goes into full labour, and Joan is there holding Doreen's hand. Now, I do hate the moment where Vera comes into the room to let them know that the ambulance has been called, it's on its way, and Joan turns around and just ends up screaming at Vera to get out of the room. This is obviously because Joan knows that Vera has caught hepatitis C, and it was just really cruel of Joan, and it always makes me feel really sad for Vera because she walks down the corridor, she looks really sad, and yeah, not good. But on a happier note, Doreen does give birth to a healthy baby boy, and it's actually quite a lush scene, and even Joan gets quite emotional. Later on, B comes to visit Doreen and baby Joshua, and Doreen tells B about Gianna and then tells B about Joan trying to kiss her. Unfortunately, what they don't realise is that Joan has entered the cubicle, but she's behind some curtains, and she hears everything. Joan then goes home and she goes absolutely crazy. She starts smashing her house up. She throws the new goldfish in the goldfish bowl onto the floor. She's smashing up the kitchen. She's ripping her hairpins out of her head. Oh my god, Joan, what is going on? We then hear some guy calling out Joan's name, and then Joan, she ends up collapsing onto the floor. This guy then, scoops down and holds Joan while she's having this little bit of a breakdown, and Joan, then starts calling herself a freak. I think she's like, I'm a freak, and the guy's like, no, you're not a freak. And Joan's reply is, I am Dad. Dad? To be fair, I think when I was first watching Wentworth, I kind of guessed that this guy was going to end up being Joan's father, but where the hell has he been? Up until now, we have only ever seen him pop up when Joan is doing her fencing. Kaz comes back to visit B by the request of B, and Kaz didn't expect to see B again after their last visit, but B ends up telling Kaz that what she and the women are doing on the outside is pretty much brilliant, and B then ends up giving Kaz a sketch of the man in the mirror guy and tells Kaz that he beats up women and he also beats her up, and I love the moment when Kaz just tells B that I'll find the bastard. And when I do, I love it, it's so powerful. B then tells Kaz that when she does find out who this guy is, she wants to know his name, and then Kaz and her girls can have him. Fletcher ends up having a little psych session with Bridget, and he ends up having flashbacks of the man in the mirror, the same one as B, because if you remember in the last episode, Fletcher saw this man drop his keys and Fletcher ended up picking it up for him. Well, Fletcher remembers seeing some guy's shoes when he was run over at the end of season 2. Now, when Fletcher was on the floor, he opened his eyes and saw the guy's shoes. And then he remembers the man in the mirror's shoes from the last episode, and he puts 2 and 2 together, and he realizes that this is the man that ran him down. The plot thickens when Fletch sees B's drawings of the same man, and he ends up having a heart-to-heart with B, begging her to tell him who this man is, and B ends up telling him that this is a man who works for Ferguson, he is her thug. Now, by the end of the episode, Fletcher connects all of the dots, and he comes to realise that for some reason, Joan tried to have him killed, but he doesn't know why yet. Oh guys, what an incredible episode, an insane amount of storylines and scenes to unpack, but this is seriously, in my opinion, an award-winning episode. An episode that I have watched many times, and I will never ever get bored of watching it. Gosh, my favourite part of this episode is going to be a tough one because there are so many great moments. I think my favourite moment just has to be the whole of Joan's story. Learning about her more, learning about her home life, seeing her home. Yeah, anything to do with Joan is definitely, I think, my favourite parts of the episode. And I really don't think I have any least favourite moments, if I'm honest with you. If I had to pick one, I would say the scene where Doreen is thrown onto the ground. That is just not okay. But now I want to hear some of your thoughts. I know some of you guys will have a lot to say on this episode, so get typing in that comments box below. Okay then guys, well thank you all for watching today's video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very soon.